if they want to. Talk don't bother me.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guests are Barry James and Alison Dundee, who are going to talk to us about a demonstration they have planned for this coming Thursday to protest the horrific massacre that happened of striking mine workers in South Africa just a couple weeks ago, in which 44 people were killed and 78 injured. So many people, this has become a controversial issue because, of course, Nelson Mandela has just turned 90-some years old, and the ANC is in power, and this is the first really large-scale mass shooting we've seen of striking workers in South Africa since the days of apartheid. So this has got us all concerned because many of us cut our teeth and were very involved in the anti-apartheid movement of the 1980s and 90s. So therefore, we need to really find out what's going on. So guys, what's going on?
Well, on August 16th, 34 striking platinum mine workers were brutally massacred just outside of Johannesburg. Some 78 were wounded, some of them critically, and now 260 are jailed. This massacre was carried out by the African National Congress, COSATU, and South African Communist Party government, the Tripartite Alliance, as you mentioned, which shows that black life in South Africa today under neo-apartheid is as cheap as it was under apartheid. If it had happened back in the day of apartheid, millions would have been out in the streets all over the world already. We think it's urgent that people come out and protest and show their solidarity with the South African miners. On Thursday, we're going to have a demonstration outside the South African Consulate here in New York City. It's on East 38th Street and First Avenue from 4:30 to 6 p.m. The demo is called around three slogans: protest the massacre of South African strikers, free the jailed miners, drop all the charges, and victory to the striking miners. We urge everybody who agrees with those slogans to please come, bring your own slogans in addition, and speak and express your own views. But it's important that we take a stand and show the social power that labor has in this country in solidarity with the South African miners.
Now, what did happen? I mean, isn't South Africa like sort of a heroic government that, I mean, would you call the anti-apartheid movement a revolution or a rebellion or?
Well, I mean, in 1994, brought it into the most horrific strictures of apartheid. But what we point out is that that the super exploitation of the masses of African workers is maintained, and that the African National Congress and the Congress of South African Trade Unions and the South African Communist Party, that Tripartite Alliance government actually rules on behalf of the landlords, and so that the whole economic structure has remained essentially the same. Change short of a workers' revolution that is extended in South Africa, that is extended to Southern Africa and indeed internationally, because that economic structure is fundamental to neo-apartheid capitalism.
Now, what I like to do is take an opportunity to show some video which was loaned to us by Russian television, which had some reporters in the middle of it, courageous reporters they were, and they have nothing but my greatest respect for bringing back footage like you're about to see. So this can be a little disturbing, so if you're easily disturbed, now's a good time to turn away for about 2 minutes, and we'll be back in about 2 minutes. So here it is. that was a video of this this shooting that killed 44 people that we've been discussing here.
Yeah, the issue has been one of wages in the main and of working conditions. It's townships. It's poverty stricken, and there's a lot of desperation there. And these miners work for some of the richest corporations in the world. In this case, in the platinum industry, and their wages are barely $500 a month in some cases. And so they were demanding. And many of these people work very far down in the ground in very dangerous jobs and have little to show for it, and so they were demanding an increase in their wages. And the platinum companies are in a squeeze right now because of what's going on in Europe, where autos are not selling, and so they decided to take it out of the hide of these workers whose conditions are already desperate. And so you have the general economic crisis in the world, and a very specific expression of it here in this situation.
Now, I was reading in
Americana.
the materials that you sent me before about the union, LUM.
NUM.
Oh, NUM. Because I didn't really understand that. They're represented by a union, but the union sided with the management?
There's been a split. The National Union of Mine Workers is a key component of the COSATU Trade Union Federation, which is a key component of the ruling government. And they are part of a more elite, post-apartheid, neo-apartheid layer that has taken a stand against these striking workers, despicably, who formed their own union, the ACMU, Association of
Mine Workers and Construction Union.
AMCU, okay.
Oh, so
And
they put together their own union when this other union wasn't representing them.
That's right. And despicably, the NUM has come out against them. The union that represents them has been widely supported by the township, as Barry indicated, where these mines are. The squalor and desperation and poverty in South Africa is so much more extreme even today than it was under apartheid. It's become one of the most unequal countries in the world. That even prior to the massacre, there was tremendous support for the strike. Since the massacre, the wives of many of these miners who were killed and others who have been disappeared in prisons and dungeons and facing murder charges have been out in the streets courageously protesting, bringing back the toy, which we haven't seen, as a protest.
Describe the toy. What's that? For folks who might not remember who.
Barry?
It's dancing and jumping up and down and marching and singing and chanting at the same time. And it's a very awesome and intimidating sight.
In one of the newspaper accounts that I read about this, they said one of the police agents said they were war dancing. That was as a rationale for their, which reminded me of the Lakota Sioux Wounded Knee doing the ghost dance, right? It seemed like that dancing is scaring people, and why would dancing scare somebody? These mines. Platinum. What is platinum used? Jewelry, I know that, but most of it is actually used for something else.
Well, it's heavily used in the auto industry now for catalytic converters, and again, that is one of the factors in why the company is trying to keep wages the way they are, lower, and squeeze the workers who are already desperate. And it also this struggle has spread. There was an earlier struggle of platinum miners in Rustenburg, and are there other platinum workers on strike right now in solidarity and demanding their own wage increases? And so that's why we're calling for victory to the strike, because this is very much a live issue. And it's absolutely desperately for the working class and the oppressed internationally to come to the side of these miners. And you were asking, Joanie, about what has changed, and people see it as a black liberation movement.
Right.
And I think that gets to an important question. What has changed fundamentally, I would argue, is not is not that much, because, and this really underscores that this is a state that represents the landlords. In the state, they
What do you
moved
call them,
against
landlords or
Rand.
landlords.
The rand is the currency of South Africa,
Right.
right?
Right.
So
Right.
these are the money, the money people,
Right.
the bankers, the big corporate.
And the owners of the corporation, the platinum mines,
Who are
the
very-
gold mines.
They're very tied to foreign imperialist interests, Anglo and American interests in particular with these mines.
Sure, this company, a matter of fact, is that
British
owns
owned.
it was originally the Rhodesian
Mhm.
mining company. It has a long history. It's changed its name in order to get out from under its history, and it's owned by members of the British ruling class.
Yes. Well, one example, I think, of what's changed,
Or
just as a
outsiders.
snapshot, what Barry was talking about, one of the leaders of the mine workers movement under the apartheid years was Cyril Ramaphosa. Today, he's a shareholder of the Lonmin mines that these workers are striking against. So that gives you a crystal clear example of the codification of an elite and ruling now on behalf of the same capitalist interests that apartheid ruled on behalf of.
In South Africa, they have a name for it. They call it the gravy train. And the gravy train is
I think we have that same name here. Interesting. Well, guys, a question I want to, because we've been hearing so much about a painting of the president of South Africa that showed his genitals. We were told about his sexual exploits and his charges of attempted rape. I mean, this is not a Nelson Mandela guy. Is this because the wrong people have gotten in charge of the ANC, or is there something more fundamental at work here?
And there's definitely something more fundamental. I mean, that's a very important question. I mean, Jacob Zuma was a populist demagogue, leader of the African National Congress. But the program of the ANC is what they're putting in, what they're implementing to the miners in Marikana. So the ANC, again, it's a capitalist government. And one of the most significant things that Nelson Mandela did was to negotiate with the former apartheid regime that there would not be a nationalization of the mines. So their ticket, in a sense, to power sharing, was this commitment that the mines would, and not just the mine, but the banks and all industry would remain in the hands of the white ruling class. And that is true today, except, as Alison points out, to those few elite who've made it to the top.
There's also, you know, Paul, you were asking about the new leader of South Africa, Zuma. It's important to recall that under Mandela and under Mbeki, worker strikes were viciously broken. A Volkswagen strike, a big public sector workers strike, several others. So it's a question of what class rules, or who's ruling on behalf of what class.
Alison, I have to look at it this way, though, and say that politically, you're really, and I give you great props for it, you really walking a hard road here. You know, Nelson Mandela is like a godlike figure to many in South Africa, to many here in the United States as well. And to criticize and say it from that he is, you know, basically a sellout, not really was what he said he was, is a strong thing to say.
Well, it's not a personal question, and it has nothing to do with an individual man's integrity. It has to do with what his political program is, and he ruled on behalf of capitalism and rescued it, in fact, in South Africa. So I think what's so important now is that because of the importance that the South African struggle had, particularly here in this country with the whole issue of racial oppression, and South Africa was like a magnification of it. There was a big identification with that struggle. It's so important now that people see that under this neo-apartheid regime, black workers are being gunned down like they were under apartheid. And just like they took a stand in solidarity with South African workers under apartheid, it's incumbent on people to come out today.
And
Okay, let's
Paul,
tell
if I could just pick up on your point. I mean, one of the issues here that obscures the class question and the centrality of the need for a workers' revolution is nationalism. And so many millions, the masses of dispossessed Africans, they identify with this or have had identification with this government because this is a black government. And so that is the part of the veil that runs very deep that has to be ripped away here to understand that the only way to make the fundamental social transformation for a socialist revolution is to replace the ANC. And for that, there needs to be a workers' party that fights for a black-centered workers' government there. The point we're making is that the only way to realize the felt need for the liberation of the black masses is through a workers' revolution and a black-centered workers' government. And of course, that government, black-centered workers' government, would welcome whites who wanted to see that government in power and the dispossessed coloreds and mixed race of South Africa as well.
Well, the question of class and race, and we've been discussing that for a long time. So,
let's repeat when the demonstration
I know,
is, because people that are getting interested.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
The demonstration is initiated by the Partisan Defense Committee. It's going to be on Thursday, day after tomorrow, August 30th, outside the South African Consulate, East 38th Street and 1st Avenue from 4:30 to 6 p.m. It has been endorsed by the New York chapter of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, by a vice president of Transport Workers Union Local 100, by a president of the ILWU Local 21 out in Washington State that just carried out a long, hard-fought struggle. And we urge others to come out and endorse and build this demonstration.
Now tell us why people have been arrested. We know they massacred people, people were injured, but then did they go into what was left of the crowd and arrest people, or did they go to their homes afterwards, or and what are they being arrested for?
Charges, they're being held with very serious charges, including murder. I think there were wholesale roundups of those who they didn't gun down and kill in cold blood right on the spot. So that's another aspect of this demonstration that's very important, and an ongoing campaign to fight to drop all the charges against the striking workers who are now being criminalized.
And it's hundreds of people.
It's 260 that we know of. Yeah. And they're being the ones charged with violence, with an illegal strike, etc. And you could see from the very powerful footage that Paul showed the massive repression that was used against them.
And what about the weapons that they had? Because they were saying that the strikers had weapons, that this is why they had to
well, you could see it.
We saw the weapons. They were piling up, sticks.
Yeah, they had sticks.
Against M16 machine guns.
But
we'll show that video again. I think we're
right.
It's a shocking video. It's up to you guys. Do you mind us? Let's watch it again.
We're talking about that there were reports in the news that the strikers were armed.
Right. And so
I just
want to capture like what was going on. The National Union of Miners, the spokesman for this union, said this is getting out of hand. The strike of these workers who support this alternative union is getting out of hand. Something has to be done. So then when the South African police forces moved in, they corralled the workers. They put up barbed wire, and then they limited their access and their movement. So this
Oh, you
whole
mean so people couldn't come and go?
Yeah.
could
Like
not
if somebody
come and
wanted
go.
to retreat, they
So-
wouldn't be able to.
Right, is exactly that. And so this was a provocation. It was meant to be retribution against these miners who were continuing their courageous fight.
So
And
you're
then-
saying this isn't just a single day that got out of control?
No, like Barry mentioned earlier, in January and February of this year, there were very hard-fought strikes in another platinum mine. So this situation has been going on, basically rolling through this whole year, and it's the contradictions of that society are getting more and more extreme, and the situation has been getting hotter and hotter, and this was the response. Massive, brutal state repression, gunning down 34 workers, injuring, I think it's 34, but
I saw 44.
You saw 44?
It keeps increasing.
it keeps increasing. And the 260 that we know of that were jailed, now facing the legal repression of the state on everything from, acts of violence to attempted murder to murder. All of it frame up charges. You could see from the video itself what they faced.
Now, were there police injured, or why are they charging people with murder?
Well, it happens every day in New York City. If you go to a demonstration and you get the crap beaten out of you by a cop, you can be sure you're going to be charged with resisting arrest. So that's what's going on here.
And the authorities, I've read in the Johannesburg newspapers, the authorities are saying that those sticks and clubs that we saw, combined with singing war chant and war songs, which is their exact words, caused the police to react in what they're calling self-defense against these people.
What is going on here, Paul, is that the neo-apartheid regime, this Tripartite Alliance, they want to have a monopoly of violence to use against the working class and the oppressed. And so they blow up the weapons. And actually, we believe that the working class and the oppressed should have the right of self-defense. And in the future, this shows what the nature of the state is in South Africa, and they're going to have to be better prepared and better organized in the future. And again, it's not going to be just a trade union struggle. It's going to have to be a social revolution.
I wanted to make one point, too, just to a point that hasn't been brought out yet about how vulnerable these workers and their families are, and their wives who are out there demonstrating still very courageously. A lot of these workers are migrant workers from Swaziland, Botswana, Mozambique, Lesotho.
Now, the miners are all men.
The miners are men. But these workers, many of them have faced wholesale deportations by the African National Congress, COSATU, and South African Communist Party government. So they're particularly vulnerable, and it's a situation that really demands international solidarity.
I have a question. We have 3 minutes left, and a question I have, Alison Dundee and Barry James from the Partisan Defense Committee. I'd like to know if the strike is continuing, because there's been talk that their workers are going back, but then I hear that's not true. And what will we see? What do you think? What do you predict we'll see in the days and weeks to come in South Africa?
Well, the strikes are continuing. That's our information, that they are spreading. And that the workers have not been cowed by even the horror of this massacre. So I think we're going to continue to see a hot situation. I also think, in part, the answer to your question, Paul, what will we see in the days and weeks ahead depends a lot on what people do here in the United States and internationally to throw a spotlight on what's happening in South Africa.
All right, that's a good opportunity to plug your event again, one more time.
Okay, the demonstration is Thursday, August 30th, 4:30 to 6 p.m. outside the South African Consulate, which is East 38th Street and First Avenue. Protest the massacre of South African strikers, free the jailed miners, drop all the charges, and victory to the striking miners. Come and join us. The protest is initiated by the Partisan Defense Committee. If you'd like to endorse the protest or help build it, call us, 212-406-4252.
Great. And a minute and a half, how would you like to what would you like to leave our viewers with? What kind of message? Hopefully one of hope.
You can make a difference.
Can we make a difference?
You can make a difference.
How?
Come out and take a stand. Let those miners and their families and workers around the world know what's happening there and that it won't be tolerated. International solidarity matters. Think about struggles, historic struggles in this country, from the struggle against slavery and the abolitionist movements around the world to the struggles around the world against apartheid. This must be protested.
And some last words. Barry?
Well, this demonstration we're having on the 30th at 4:30 in front of the South African Consulate is important because it's a way of demonstrating that the African National Congress and the Congress of South African Trade Unions and the South African Communist Party, which many people continue to have illusions in, and the American left and the left internationally has illusions in, that this is a crime perpetrated by them, and to pull away from that and to demonstrate conclusively what it is for the whole world to see. And it's a way of making a statement that the working class is an international class, and this is in their interests.
Thank you very much, guys, for joining us on Let Them Talk.
Thanks
We'll have
for
you on
having
again.
us.
Thank you.